Hi, welcome to a brand new series. Will it be occasional series for obvious reasons called Outro. This is a new kind of series here, which is after interview series where I talk about interviews on shows, um, being interviewed on shows and shows that I've done when I'm interviewed. So depending on when I get interviews or when I get interviewed or what shows I'm on, I'll do one of these outro. So kind of brand new. So it's not continual. So unless I get interviewed by a lot of talk shows or programs, I won't be doing a lot of these outros. I'll be just doing them when I get interviewed. Thus, the idea for the show. So I was interviewed earlier this month for a show. It was the first interview of the year for me, and so the idea of the show, just so that you have an idea, is I discuss being interviewed on the show and my thoughts about it, just so that you know. It's a short form show. So again, this is only after interviews on shows, and also it's a recommendation for interviews. So the first interview I did this year for a show on YouTube called Another Nerdy Cast. I'd never been on the show before, and so for me, it's a kind of, as somebody who has a background in regards to sci-fi. I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm a Star Wars fan. Other kinds of sci-fi shows, fantasy shows, what have you. And as somebody who's been a film reviewer, which was the main reason I was on the show, um, and journalist. I It's interesting. I've never really done kind of the shows like the pop culture sci-fi, you know, you know, geek type shows, for lack of a better term. I've never done those kinds of shows for whatever reason. And so I don't know why, but I've been booked on different kinds of programs, talking about various subjects. And when I did another Nerdicast, and I did it because it's a long story, but I actually was there to talk about my time with Ain't It Cool News. I used to be a contributor and a film reviewer for Ain't It Cool News. For those of you who aren't aware, Ain't It Cool News, of course, is a film website. I don't know if it's still around now, but it was founded in 1996, and I started writing for Ain't It Cool in 2002, and I covered film festivals in Hawaii for Ain't It Cool until about 2010, which is when I stopped writing for the site. Um, and in 2017, from what I and what I later found out, 2017, Harry Knowles, who created the site, was accused of having harassed women, a number of women, and had to kind of step down as the kind of the site runner for Ada Cool News. And of course, this was years after I had written for the site, and I actually found out about it as I stated on another Nerdicast. I was going to some forum or event, something with geek in the title. It was at a convention center here in town, and I actually was talking to a guy. He had a blurb from Ain't It Cool News on his comic book. He was a comic book writer and artist, I believe, and he had this blurb his um, on his comic book. And I said, "Oh yeah, I used to write for Ain't It Cool." And he was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Yeah, you know, too bad with what occurred with Harry." And I went, "Well, what occurred with Harry?" I didn't know. This was about, I think, 2019. I believe it was 2019 or so, if I recall correctly. I think it was around 2019. And he told me about the fact that Harry had been ostensibly, and I would just say, I don't know if it's absolutely proven that he was involved or absolutely proven, but I'll just say allegedly harassing women, not only women who wrote for his site, but also other female film reviewers, I believe, and other women. And I was surprised. And so I discussed this on another Nerdy Cast. And so that's what I was there on the show to do. Primarily because there were a couple of people on the show, on another Nerdy Cast, who had written for Ain't It Cool. And the main reason why I decided to talk about Ain't It Cool now, years after I stopped writing for it, you know, over a decade, I'd say, after I stopped writing for it, um, was primarily because of a commentary, oh, not a commentary, but a documentary that was done by a guy called Joe Scott, I believe his name, called Download. And I encourage those of you, if you are interested in the site or interested in Harry for some reason, for whatever reason, if I would recommend that podcast documentary. It's several episodes. I forget how many episodes. I listened to about four at least, including an interview with Harry Knowles. And listening to that and then hearing their experiences on another Nerdy Cast, because I was looking for, I think it was a documentary that featured Ain't It Cool. I was looking for it and it put Ain't It Cool in the search engine and another cast had come up. And so I reached out to another Nerdicast. They had me on the show earlier this month, and I had a good time being interviewed by the cast and crew there at another Nerdicast. And so it was a good experience. And again, it made me wonder why I hadn't done shows like another Nerdicast, podcast like another Nerdicast before. I don't know why I haven't done it. I think because I've been booked on different kinds of talk shows talking about different subjects. I rarely talk about movies unless they're in the service of some other subject. And well, nowadays I have gone back to kind of my roots in terms of movies. I stopped reviewing movies in 2010, and um, by 2019, I decided I think it was time to get back to dealing with movies and films, not only that I love, but I'm interested in, fascinated with online, and kind of move away from just simply doing various topics that I had been, booked on shows to be interviewed about. And so I opted to, and so I've been on a show called, I think it's called Close Watch now. It was called Crooked Table. And I analyzed Eyes Wide Shut. I analyzed Mulholland Drive. I've analyzed Airplane. That came out last year. So I'd recommend that you go and check out my analysis of all those films. So I've moved into what I call film analysis, meaning I'm a film analyst. That's what I bill myself on these shows. I don't review films anymore. I did for a few years, and I covered film festivals for quite a number of years. I think at least 15 um, here in my home state. Um, and for Ain't It Cool, but also for local newspapers. And so doing another nerdy cast was a kind of great way, I think. Hopefully, I'll be able to do more pop culture, geek, um, film, and TV type podcast, which is what I've been trying to move into, and I think trying to move in that direction. So that's what I'm interested in doing more of, and really just totally doing it eventually. I mean, that's what I've been trying to move into. So I hope that works out. Another, in terms of the interview with another Nerdycast itself, it went very well. I enjoyed, for me, writing for Ain't It Cool was a positive experience. It wasn't a negative experience. But I was covering film festivals in Hawaii, so I was a contributor from Hawaii. I wasn't in Austin, Texas, which is where Ain't It Cool was based. I was a freelance writer and journalist in Hawaii, so it's a very different reality for me. And I was really a part-time film reviewer because I was mostly writing other articles for magazines and newspapers to survive, to make money and survive. So, um, in regards to Inico, I really didn't know. I would have no idea what it's like in Austin. My experience was different. I was covering film festivals and writing about films in my hometown, and enjoyed that. And so, yeah, I did have a positive experience with Inico. I don't want to talk entirely about that, but to the interview with another Nerdy Cast, it was enjoyable. I think to be on a show like that, and it made me realize again that I should be doing more of this, and that this should be my natural inclination. And I don't know why I wasn't doing more shows, sci-fi, film, TV, geek-oriented shows. I don't know. Hopefully, I'll do more. If anybody watches Outro, hopefully they'll do it. But it was a good interview. I enjoyed it, and I think it made sense. The only reason, again, that I'm talking about Ain't It Cool is I think it's time. It wasn't something I ever gave much thought about. To me it was a gig, and it was not paying gig. I was being paid really to cover, to write for magazines and newspapers. Um, but it was a gig nonetheless, and you do that and you move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So it didn't impact me the way that it would impact other people who maybe weren't journalists or maybe not writers like I was. They were people that became writers, became journalists because of Ain't It Cool. And I have to say, I do feel a little. Uh, I figured it must. I do feel a little sorry. I mean, some of them have recovered and gone on, but I do feel a little sorry. I do feel sorry for those that were negatively impacted by what happened to the site. And it must have been very hard because I think a lot of people invested a lot of effort in that site and into what it meant to them. It meant a great deal to them. It wasn't just a website, it meant something to them. But the interview on Another Nerdycast was good. I'd love to come back to the show. Would love to do it again. Um, and I hope to do more sci-fi oriented, geek oriented, pop culture oriented, and film and TV oriented podcasts and shows. Please let me know if you have such a show and podcast. Let me know. I'd be interested. Um, and that's the first episode of Outro. Again, this is kind of a special series done as a kind of after interview series. Thank you for watching, and we're out. Bye, folks.